And so we reach the end of Nona the Ninth, and also the Locked Tomb series as it currently exists. As of the time of this recording, I am now fully caught up on everything Locked Tomb, I think. Unless there's a short story or novella or something I'm not aware of, because I did read the study of Dr. Sex. Um, so as far as I know, that's everything. Um, and now I'm on the same page as everyone else, which is always exciting for a series like this to sort of no longer have to worry uh, about spoilers or about saying something foolish that everyone else already knows the answer to. Now we're all on the same page, and when Alecto comes out, I will be going into it just with the exact same level of knowledge as everyone else, which is nice. Um, so wow, that was a lot. Before I get into sort of like the spoilers and the specifics of what happened here, I will say, um, definitely my favorite ending out of all three of these books. My favorite like climax, I guess. Um, Also, overall impressions. Nona was my favorite of the three point of view characters we've had so far. I had a blast being in her head even more than I did with Gideon and Harrow. Nona is not necessarily. Nona is probably my least favorite of those three as a character. I don't necessarily care much for reading about Nona, but I love reading as Nona, if that makes sense. I guess my ideal Lock Tomb book, I guess at this point, would be one where everything is tightly focused on Harrow, Gideon, and Ianthe, but Nona is the point of view character. Because I just enjoy the way she thinks about things and the way she perceives things. And I also think it's the biggest sort of flex of Muir's writing ability to write as Nona. I'm curious to see. No, that's a spoiler. I won't talk about that yet. I haven't entered that. I'm trying to not really spoil stuff quite yet. Um, because I'm sort of getting my general impressions. That being said, though, this book overall, uh, I think overall I still prefer Harrow as a holistic experience, Harrow the Ninth. Um, because Nona was quite slow for a very long time. Like the first, like I really enjoyed the first half of this book, but let's be honest, for the first half of this book, absolutely nothing happens. And I don't think it could have been any other way. I'm not saying, oh, Tamsyn Muir should have cut some of that out. I don't actually think that. I think the book is as good as it can be for what it is, and it's really, really good. I'm just saying that sort of just as a sort of holistic reading experience, it is very unbalanced. Like it's like reading a very chill, like relaxing stroll of a novel and then suddenly being plunged off a cliff at the end. Which is, it's a fun experience in its own right. But I did enjoy the way that Harrow the Ninth sort of kept you on the edge of the cliff all the way up until the plunge, like from the very start of the book. Um, which you know, that sort of added a bit of excitement to that reading experience that the first half of Nona lacks, I think. But that being said, uh, we're not here to talk about the book as a whole. We're here to talk about this final section, and this final section is maybe my favorite section of any Locked Tomb book so far. Maybe competing with the final act of Harrow, because I really like the final act of Harrow. Maybe. Um, man, the final act of Gideon was really good too. Tamsyn Muir is just really good at final acts, I think. Um, but regardless, let's talk about this section. And this section is starting after the John 120 chapter. Um, and from this point on, I'm spoiling everything. So, uh, first thing that happens here in this section, or well, one of the first things we really get is Palamedes and Camilla become a true lictor. Like they attain what appears to be true lictorhood, meaning they like fully become one person, like their souls fuse. Which I imagine is probably set up for where Harrow and Gideon's relationship is eventually going to go at the end of the fourth book. Like that just seems like an obvious direction for that relationship to go. Um, and there's this interesting part where, right before they do it, right before actually no, that's not apart from this section. It's apart from the previous section where Palamedes says, well, Nona says, can one person be two people? And Palamedes says, lictors can, or at least they thought they could. In fact, all they became were half-dead cannibals. I think a true lictorhood is a mutual death, a gravitational singularity creating something new, a true grand lysis, rather than the petty lysis of the megatheorem. Lysis means, I believe, the breakdown of the walls of a cell, essentially the death of a cell, by means of its walls breaking down and all the contents of it spilling out. So I'm assuming that what I'm getting from this is that what Palamedes and Camilla did here is essentially their souls experienced lysis. Like the actual boundary that kept their souls separate dissolved and they fully melded into one soul. And as he said, it is a sort of mutual death, meaning that Palamedes and Camilla are dead now. Paul, the new person we've got, who's who is gendered inconsistently, by the way. Like sometimes Paul is referred to as he by the narration and sometimes as they, and I'm not sure what's up with that. I'm gonna go with they for now, just because I mean I figured the two people making them up are a man and a woman. I don't know. But then again, Paul is a male name. I don't know. Anyway, Paul is not is like they're not Camilla and Palamedes mushed together. They're a whole new person created out of the raw material of Camilla and Palamedes' souls after both of them died. So that's cool. That's cool. I like that ending. I'm very happy for ending. I mean ending for Palamedes and Camilla. I'm happy for them. I feel like if any two characters were really, really like that was the only way they could ever be happy, it's those two. Well, those two and the Tridentarius sisters. I don't know if they'll get that, because Ianthe is the way she is. But I feel like if they were ever to attain true happiness, this is what Corona and Ianthe would have to do to gain that. That's sort of the vibe I'm getting. At least for Ianthe. I'm not actually sure Corona wants that. As I discussed last time, I think Corona might be less into the sisterly bond than I had previously thought. Anyway, Paul seems to suggest to Ianthe that Ianthe can still do this kind of lictorhood with Nabirius, even though Nabirius is dead. Paul says to Ianthe, I know how hard it is for you to kick against the goad, but there are more worlds than this. Come with us. We are the love that is perfected by death, but even death will be no more. Death can also die. There's still time, Ianthe. Time for you and for Nibiria's turn. Of course, Ianthe rejects their offer because she's Ianthe, of course. But that's a really interesting thing to say. So, it, do Ianthe and Nibirius care enough about each other for that to even be possible? Is Nibirius in any meaningful way still around? Because as far as I know, none of the other Lictor Cavaliers are, except Gideon and Pyra. Like, those are the two examples of a Cavalier's soul basically surviving the Lictorhood process. So I don't know what to make of the inclusion of Nibirius there. Like, I would have expected Paul to offer it to Ianthe and Corona, not Ianthe and Nibirius, basically. Don't know. The other thing that's interesting here is death will be no more. Death can also die. Don't know what to make of that, but I feel like it's probably a very important sentence that I'm gonna remember hopefully in the next book. Anyway, what else happened here? The angel or AIM shows up and they say a weird thing about how they say, I am the messenger, we are the message. The message has two parts left, and you are looking at one of those parts. The name for this part of the message was AIM, when the message was passed to us through my forebear Emma Sim. The message is too simple for human beings like us to understand. And we don't find out what the message is. So obviously that's set up for the next book. I'm not going to spend too long lingering on AIM as a character right now. I'm just going to say, much like Paul, still not sure what pronouns to use for AIM, because the they that is used to refer to them at this point really seems like it's about plurality more than gender. Like, it's the plural they, not the singular they. So I don't know if it also works as like a pronoun for AIM as a person. I don't know. I'm gonna keep going with they though. Anyway, so that's sort of the stuff that happens before they leave. What's the name of the planet? The planet that most of this book is set on? I cannot remember the name of that planet. Anyway, Paul takes them all through the river. And the river is weird now. There's a bell tower in it, apparently. Like, just a huge bell tower rising up out of the river. And the river is also seems a lot less aggressive than it used to be. I'm confused about the bell tower, certainly. The bell tower was also briefly shown at the end of the last John chapter, where Harrow walks away from John and into the water, and she seems to be going towards the bell tower. And the tower was also mentioned by Varun the Eater, the resurrection beast, in the body of Captain Judith in the previous section, where Varun said to Nona, let me see, they are coming out of their tower, salt thing. There is a hole at the bottom of their tower. I will pull their teeth. I will make it blank for you. I don't know what's up with the tower either. I think the tower and AIM are like very much two things that we are leaving for the next book. I do think the they that Varun refers to might be the devils that show up when they get to the ninth house, but that's just speculation. Anyway, they get to the ninth house because Nona essentially, well, she doesn't fully remember who she is, but at this point she basically remembers who she is, and to us as readers, it's very clear that she's Alecto. So yeah, Nona is Alecto, by the way. Uh, in case you didn't know. Um, and Nona slash Alecto was the person that John created out of the spirit of the earth at the end of the previous John chapter. So Nona remembers basically everything about herself except her name, kind of, and she just kind of starts falling apart. Well, she starts falling apart. Harrow's body starts falling apart because now it contains a soul that knows what it is, and the size of that soul, from what I understand, is just kind of too great for Harrow's body, so she starts falling apart. Um, and obviously, the only way to fix that is to get Nona to the locked tomb, i.e., to her actual Alecto body, and therefore get her soul back where it's supposed to be, so that Harrow's body will be fine. And that takes us to the lock tomb, and not lock. Well, first to the ninth house, and at the ninth house, um, we see Crux and Ailamine, whatever her name is, Crux and the other one, the two old people who trained Gideon. Um, and it's so nice to see them again, honestly. Well, it's nice to see Ailamine, not so nice to see Crux. Crux still sucks. I do like the sort of back and forth between Crux and Gideon, where they still have this like deep hatred for each other. And I like that Crux doesn't care that she's the Emperor's daughter. Like, he finds that out and he takes it in his stride, and he's like, "Well, you still suck." I like that. I think Gideon needs that. She's gotten a bit. The whole Emperor's daughter thing has gone to her head a little bit, from what I can tell. Um, Anyway, they find them and they also find the devils. The devils being something horrifying, which is the thing that way back in the first book. This is actually a detail I completely forgot about since then because it has not come up at all, which is that at the end of the first book, uh, Callum Asht's body briefly becomes possessed by something horrifying, like right before he dies, and no one really knows what. Apparently, that was a devil, and apparently there's a bunch of these things now, and they're what John and the lictors have been fighting for the past 6 months since Harrow the Ninth. There you go. There you have it. I'm guessing that's going to be a major plot point in the next book. We don't really learn anything about them here. Um, what we do learn, however, is about the relationship that has developed over the past 6 months between Gideon and Ianthe, because Ianthe shows up to stop them from getting into the locked tomb, and Gideon and Ianthe are revealed to be wearing matching friendship bracelets. I literally. And then immediately afterwards, they do a secret handshake. I have in my notes here that I write like as I'm reading. I have note 1. Gideon and Ianthe are wearing all caps friendship bracelets! Exclamation point, question mark. And then italics all caps. They have a secret handshake? Uh, Completely unexpected twist, but I love to see it. I do still maintain, by the way, and this is an opinion that is going to be highly controversial in this fandom, I'm sure. I maintain that Gideon and Ianthe are the best pairing. I I don't dislike Harrow. I love Harrow, but I think Gideon and Ianthe are better together than either of them is with Harrow. There, I said it. Uh, Gideon and Ianthe are my OTP. Anyway, Ianthe continues to suck in her typical lovable way, but she reveals something fascinating. So, as she's trying to explain why they mustn't release Alecto from the tomb, Ianthe says, he loves her. John loves Alecto. John needs Alecto. Without that piece of goddamned fridge meat, he's nothing. And we need to keep him that way. That's a fascinating statement. So I guess I was wrong about Ianthe. I had thought that Ianthe was going to be like. I had thought that Ianthe had become like weirdly loyal to John, but I guess not. I think Ianthe sees herself as essentially John's handler because John is not all there, and he's clearly not thinking clearly or making decisions rationally. And I think Ianthe sees herself as the person who is. I think she kind of sees herself as like the gray eminence behind the Emperor at this point. Um, like she's pulling his strings, keeping information from him, trying to keep him under control, trying to keep him, as it were, nothing. And that sort of cements for me my prediction, which is that by the end of the fourth book, Ianthe Tridentarius will be the actual main antagonist of the Locked Tomb series. Like, she will supplant John as the big bad that has to be conquered at the end. Um, at least that's how I feel about it now, and it's what I kind of want to happen. We'll see if it ends up actually happening. Um, anyway, her mentioning that John loves Alecto is the final trigger that basically erases Nona, the person, from existence, and she is fully back to being Alecto. Um, and there's this paragraph that I just think is really well written. Um, John loved her. She was John's cavalier. She loved John, for she so loved the world that she had given them John. For the world so loved John that she had been given. For John had so loved her that he had made her she, for John had loved the world. The part about that I find fascinating is she so loved the world that she had given them John. Um, I take that to mean that John awoke to his necromantic powers, that John became the first necromancer because the sentient soul of the earth chose him as kind of its avatar. Probably without knowing how far he would end up going. Um, if I'm right about that, that's really interesting. That I wonder. I wonder if, from her perspective, the powers she gave him were ever gonna have anything to do with the death. Because, like, we call what they do necromancy, but essentially what they do is just the manipulation of life energy. And I'm kind of wondering if, in the mind, such as it was, of the Earth, these powers were going to have a completely different purpose than what they ended up having. Um, like maybe it was just meant to be a way for John to save the environment through essentially terraforming the Earth instead of manipulating human lives and deaths. Uh, that would be interesting. If these powers aren't fundamentally necromantic, that's just how humans how one human ended up putting them to use, and that's how and therefore when he gave these powers to others, it was the form they took. Um, yeah, interesting. Um, anyway, there's a big final confrontation inside the tomb. Um, nothing. I mean, it's a great scene, but there's just a couple of moments from it that I really, really want to point out. So in order to finally open the tomb, someone needs to die, and basically as a sacrifice, like to release of Thanergy or whatever. And Crux volunteers, and Gideon has this amazing line. Good, die, die for her. Her being Harrow. It's the only goddamn good you'll ever do her. It's all any of you knew how to give her. You could have lived for her, but you didn't know how. That's really interesting. So, we haven't really been back to the ninth house in a while, and I've kind of forgotten that that's where this whole story. I mean, I haven't forgotten, but it's kind of slipped my mind that this whole story started with Gideon's childhood abuse at the hands of these horrible people, including Harrow. Um, and I really find it interesting that Gideon now actually blames Crux and, well, not just Crux, but the Ninth House as an institution, more for its treatment of Harrow than for its treatment of herself. Like, her final condemnation of Crux is not for what he did to her, it's for what he failed to do for Harrow. Um, and I do, like, I don't want to necessarily compare abusive childhoods, but if I had to, I would say that I may agree with that. I think Harrow has been more scarred and more hurt by the ninth house than Gideon, despite Gideon going through what at first glance seems like more severe abuse, because her abuse was often physical. But I do think that Harrow is Harrow's scars from her upbringing are far deeper than Gideon's. I think Gideon has. I mean, she still hates Crux, obviously, and she's still mad, but I think Gideon is more able to move on from her childhood in the ninth than Harrow ever will be. Um, which is interesting. Um, anyway, following that, uh, Nona slash Alecto collapses on top of the actual Alecto body in the tomb, um, placing her soul back in its proper receptacle. Harrow immediately, instantly pops back into her body, which is interesting. Um, and Alecto, Alecto wakes up, realizes that Harrow is the descendant of Anastasia. Weirdly enough, doesn't seem to either realize or care about the fact that Gideon is John's daughter. She doesn't really comment on that at all. Instead, what she focuses on is Harrow being a descendant of Anastasia, and she swears fealty and service to Harrow. At which point, the greatest line in the entire book comes, which is Gideon saying, "Get in line, thou big slut." Fantastic line. I'm obsessed with that line. Get in line, thou big slut. Love that. Um, and and then there's a hard cut to Alecto showing up wherever the hell John is, and stabbing him through the heart with her sword, but he's fine. Like, he wakes up and she says good morning, and he says good morning, and that's the end of the book. Okay, sure, sure. I'm really curious what happened between those scenes. Like, what happened Like, how did Harrow react to Alecto swearing fealty to her? Guess we'll have to wait and find out. Um. Anyway, oh yeah, the other really good thing from this final chapter that I have to point out is the interaction where Harrow and Ianthe are like vying over Alecto's body, where like Alecto wants to kill, where Ianthe wants to kill Alecto, and Harrow is protecting her, and um, and there's also the interaction goes like this. Let me just find it. So Ianthe says, "Dost thou oppose me, and thou half dead?" To which Harrow says, "I am as one half dead, but you would be two halves dead, bitch." To which Ianthe says, "My sweet, I only die of longing for thee." To which Harrow says, "Then perish." That whole interaction is so good. Especially because it's being delivered to us through the perspective of Alecto, who cannot appreciate the humor at all. Anyway, yeah, that's pretty much everything that happened here. I want to talk about. What I want to talk about now at the end is there's two big holes left in the story for me. Two big things that I can't tell if I'm just stupid for not understanding them, or if I'm actually not supposed to understand them yet. Because it feels insane to me that I'm not. It feels way too late in the story for me to not understand these two things that I'm about to talk about. But I just don't, and I feel like there has not been any revelation about them pretty much whatsoever. So, the first and less important one for me is, what were the John chapters in this book? Like, why was he talking to he was talking to Harrowhark, but he was talking to her about Alecto in the second person as though she were Alecto. And Harrow was also nodding along and talking in the first person about Alecto. What? What was that? That was like. Also, literally, what are these chapters? Like, where is this happening? It says in the dream, but is this a dream that's happening now, concurrently with the plot of Nona the Ninth? Is this the dream that Alecto wakes John from at the end of the book? Why are John and Harrow sharing a dream? Why is he calling her Alecto? Rather, he's calling her Harrowhark, but he's referring to her as Alecto. I'm so lost. I get everything that happens in these chapters. I just don't get what is this framing device? When is this happening? Where is this happening? Why is this happening? What is the occasion on which he is telling Harrow this story? And why is he telling it in the weird way he tells it? And what is the space they are in? Yeah, I'm hoping that will get explained, because I mean, although again, if this doesn't get explained, that's actually fine by me. Like, this is one of those things that, as far as I'm concerned, it can remain sort of vague and symbolic. I would prefer if it didn't, but it can. Like, it doesn't like mess with my understanding of the story really at all. Mm. It just kind of puzzles me. What is a bit more of a glaring omission, at least from my understanding of this setting, because again, I don't know if I'm supposed to get this yet. So, John's whole mission in life, basically, the only reason he continues to exist, the only reason he's built the 9 houses, all of this, is so that he can track down the ships that got away, carrying, like, basically the equivalent of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, and kill them, punish them. So, a couple of issues with that. First of all, obviously, it's been 10,000 years. By this point, these are not Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. They are the distant descendants of them. and therefore John loses any moral high ground for anything he's doing, frankly. If that really is his goal. If I've understood that correctly, that that is why he does what he does. There is absolutely zero moral justification. He is a monster. But you know, I wasn't really expecting John to be a secret good guy, frankly. John is a monster at this point. Even if his initial motivations were justified. Um, but what I don't get is, has he found them yet? You see, we it's clear from the way this setting is set up that there are the 9 houses, and then there are a bunch of other planets where humans are, and John has conquered these other planets, and he's basically like colonized them and is exploiting them for resources, namely thanergy and thalergy. And these other planets are sort of the soil from which blood of Eden sprouted. So are these the descendants of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk? Like, has he found the people he's looking for? And it sounds like, and he found these planets, like, he's been colonizing these planets for thousands of years, so he found them a while ago. So, like, what is he doing? Why hasn't he just killed them yet? What is his what is John's goal? If I'm right, and that's who these people are, like if Blood of Eden and the planets that they fight for are the people that John has been hunting this whole time, why are they still alive? Why is he conquering their planets instead of just killing them all? Um, why is he building an empire? Uh, has he just become like a power hungry emperor kind of figure that he just wants to expand his empire? I mean, that makes sense to me as like a political thing to have, like the self perpetuation of imperial growth and the imperial drive for eternal growth and conquest and so forth, and the acquisition of more and more resources and land and people and bodies. But I have not gotten the impression that John wants power so much as he wants revenge. And he's doing a really bad job of getting that revenge. Unless it's like a perverse thing where, like, it's not enough to kill them, like they have to suffer for generations under the oppression of my empire or something like that as punishment for what they did. Um, I guess that could make sense. So, but then of course, I still don't actually know for sure that that's who these people are. What if these are just more people that he resurrected from Earth that he's oppressing for no reason, and he's still looking for the Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk kids? I don't. The the like political geopolitical situation of this setting is still very unclear to me. um, yeah, so I just don't. I can sit here and work myself up going in circles for however long you want, but I just don't know the answer right now. And I don't know if I'm supposed to know the answer or if it's something that hasn't been revealed yet on purpose. Um so yeah, that's my big question, I guess, going into Alecto. Will we figure out what John wants? And has he actually found these goddamn people that he's looking for? I don't know. Um Anyway, uh, very appropriately for a Locked Tomb book, I am ending on a very confused note. That is that is one of the overwhelming emotions that these books provoke when reading them, I think, and I think that is very much on purpose. Um, I have really, really enjoyed my time with this series so far. Tamsyn Muir has skyrocketed to very close to the top of my list of favorite authors. And I cannot wait for Alecto. Uh, However, for now, it is time for me to take a break until Alecto is released from her wonderful, wonderful writing, and finally get back to finishing the Soldier Sun trilogy. So that is what will be happening next. I will be going into the final book of the Soldier Sun trilogy, and then after that, who knows where life will take us. I have not decided what I'm going to be reading after Soldier Sun yet. We shall see. So, I will see all of you hopefully next week for the beginning of the final Soldier Sun book. For those of you who are interested, at least. And I'm going to go and get back to reading that, which I've already started reading. See you. Bye.